Good evening. My name is Stella Chitralekha Biswas, and I will be moderating today's session. I am an assistant in the current project of Tell Me Your Story and state-aided college teacher at the Department of English, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata. I welcome you to the stories of food and drinks shaping cultural identity and ideology, curated under TMYS Review, September 2022, in collaboration with the York Center for Asian Research, York University, and Readomania. We are also calling for the submission of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Ms. Roychowdhury Banerjee, Ms. Swethal Ramchandran, and Ms. Rajyashree Chattopadhyay, who will shortly share their views and insights with us. The topic for today's discussion is religious history of food consumption under the sub-theme food rituals and their contemporary relevance. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Ms. Debalina Roychowdhury Banerjee. Ms. Roychowdhury Banerjee is currently working as state-approved college teacher in Sarojini Naidu College for Women and Faculty of English Literature in Amity University, Kolkata. She has done her diploma in symbology from Center of Excellence, UK. An anthology of Bengali and English poems written by her was published in 2013 and 2017, respectively. She has authored 2 books named Into the Myths and Reading Yeats as a Romantic Antiquarian. Her core interests are in poetry, world mythologies, epic literature, and symbolism. A very warm welcome to you, Debalina Di. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you so much. And thanks to both Rajyashree and Swethal. Okay. I would like to start since
May I just
today's.
interrupt you for a minute? I would like
Yes,
to
yes.
introduce both the other speakers before we move on to open the forum for discussion.
Yeah.
And I apologize for the interruption.
No, it's okay.
Our second speaker for the session is Ms. Swethal Ramchandran. Ms. Ramchandran is currently an interdisciplinary PhD scholar in English and Women's Studies at the Department of Women's Studies, University of Madras, Chennai. She is also engaged as the Teaching Research Fellow at the same department. Her research interests include gender studies, cultural studies, modern critical theory, and Indian English writing. She has published research articles pertaining to Indian feminism, mythology, and subaltern studies in both national and international journals, as well as pieces of poetry in magazines and online poetry slams. It is a pleasure to have you with us today, Swethal. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Stella, a very dear friend, for the opportunity as well as a warm welcome. And greetings to my fellow panelists.
Our first speaker for the session is Ms. Rajyashree Chattopadhyay. Ms. Chattopadhyay is an aspiring food blogger. In her Instagram page, Tossed Tales, she writes about her experiences with dishes that she cooks and memories, anecdotes, and history related to them. Moving to Delhi for work has exposed her to a cosmopolitan crowd, and she is currently experimenting with and learning about forgotten recipes from different cuisines. In the future, she hopes to have her own food business. Currently, she is working as an associate editor at Cambridge Publishing. We are glad to have you on the panel, Rajyashree. Thank you for
Good
joining
evening,
us this
Stella,
evening.
and good evening to my co-panelists.
We will now open the forum for discussion. I would request Debalina Di to share her insights on the topic. Over to you.
Excuse me. First of all, it's a very interesting topic because food, whenever we hear about the word food, obviously something very tasty and very attractive things come in our mind. But yes, there's a long history that has a that dates actually quite early, and it has a cultural side also. I would like to start with the word religion here. Probably it would not be correct to say that religion is a perfect translation to the word dharma. Religion originates from the Latin word religio or religio, meaning bond with reverence. And the word dharma comes from the Sanskrit root word dhri, which means that which carries or bears. Religion is more about set of beliefs or faith, and dharma, on the other hand, is much like providing a shape to a specific community. It may be said that dharma is some definite characteristic or features that are found in humans both individually and also as a community. Now, let us come to the point that food and dharma, alias religion, uh, yes, food is undoubtedly a vital part of religion. On the other hand, it may be said that food too has its own dharma or gunas. Now, I'm sorry, I can't call it religion here whatsoever. Sri Krishna, in the Gunatraya Yoga section of Bhagavad Gita, tells Arjuna, Satam Rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nivedhanti mahabaho dehe dehinam vayam. This shloka tells us about the three basic gunas or qualities of food, those which are directly associated with human body. This shloka means that these three qualities bind the inexhaustible self that exists within the living body. According to Hindu philosophy, sattva, raja, and tama are the three qualities that serve to be the pillars of all things. Food is also not an exception to that. Let us first know a bit about these three qualities. Sattva or sattvic means anything that is holy, that which is related to knowledge, solidarity or unity, ahimsa, bliss, satisfaction, greatness, etc. Raja or Rajasic represents energy, attraction, desire, excitement, and action. On the other hand, Tama or Tamasic Guna represents darkness, laziness, sleep, inaction. It is noteworthy that Sattva gives rise to Ananda or joy as Sattvic food, which are in the mode of goodness. Raja gives rise to Dukha or grief as Rajasic food, which are the mode of passion, and Tama gives rise to Moha or illusion as Tamasic food are in the mode of ignorance. These three qualities are not limited within the humans or animals only. These are also found in different food items. According to the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita, food items are classified under these three basic gunas. Sattvic food items include fresh vegetables and fruits, dry fruits, food grains, milk products, rice, pulses, etc. This food course is completely vegetarian. Food that is well cooked, warm, easily digestible is considered to be sattvic food. It enhances strength, intelligence, lifespan, recuperation, health, and both mental and physical capacity. Sattvic food is generally served, that was the history, Sattvic food was generally served on banana leaves. Warm food served on the same gets mingled with polyphenol present in the banana leaf and helps in reducing blood sugar, heart diseases, preventing blood clotting, and improving brain function and digestion. Rajasic food on or the stimulants are those food items that include fish, meat, egg, tea, coffee, oily and fried food items. Rajasic food energizes and excites the body and mind of the consumer. Thus, in ancient period, those who had to stay active in profession or the ones who had to perform consumed Rajasic food course. For instance, the merchants, kings, the aristocrats fed on Rajasic course of food. Thus, Rajasic food, according to the Shastras or the religious texts, was for the go-getters of the society, whose lives were framed on four pillars mainly: power, prestige, position, and prosperity. Tamasic food or the sedatives are those which include overcooked, burnt, stale, processed, and of course not the fresh ones. This type of food includes soft drinks, alcohol, pastries, cheese, pizzas, tobacco, pickle, jam, ice creams, and of course the canned and the fermented food items. Overeating undoubtedly is a tamasic trait. People consuming such food face mood swings, insecurity, desire, and cravings. For the consumers of tamasic food course, aging gets faster. Generally, they face chronic fatigue problems. They become prone to diseases like arthritis, heart diseases, diabetes, and even cancer. According to our religious texts, food is consumed while sitting in an upright posture, keeping the food pipe straight so that the consumed food gets mingled with the body properly and we can have a better effect altogether. Since ancient time, the tradition of using our hand for eating is quite common and well known. While eating, we make use of all the five fingers to hold our food and take it in. This way, we can feel the temperature of the food, the mass and the shape of it, which creates a positive connection between the consumer and the consumed. Apart from this, we make use of our five fingers, which according to beliefs are the representatives of the five major elements. That is Kshiti or earth, Up or water, Tej or fire, Marut or air, and Vyom or ether. Note the implication of the same. These five elements are the ones which our body is also made up of. Thus, the five fingers representing the five elements suggests the unification of the internal and the external elements. Though we discussed about the three categories of food or the qualities of the food, but the categorization is not so simple. Sattvic or good, of course, it brings it because it seems to bring joy. If it take a night, generally what happens, sattvic food that seems to bring joy, but it has a different implication when if it is taken in the during the night time. If taken at night and in excess, it becomes rajasic in quality. The same food, the sattvic food. Thus, the same food items in that case brings forth grief, disorder, and disease. Again, if the same sattvic food content is consumed out of greed or lust, it becomes tamasic, inviting sloth and sleep. On the contrary, a person who has undergone a hard labor for the whole day, if consumes tamasic food to a specific extent, he may have a relaxing effect which can be effective for his health. Thus, there's a role reversal which goes on among these three types of food.
Thank you for your very insightful observations, Debalina Di. I would now request Ms. Ramchandran to share her views on the topic. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Stella. So today, for our broader panel on food rituals and contemporary relevance, I thought I'll shed light on the intersection between gender and food taboos and myths. So I think being born and brought up in India, none of us can actually escape what is called as these food myths or food taboos. Because I'm sure at different instances of our life, somewhere along, we would all have had to adhere to what is called as these food taboos or myths. So, for instance, as far as I remember, when I was a small girl, and also until now, I believe, I've always been asked to not consume twin bananas or co-joined bananas, as the odds of conceiving twins would be higher. So scientifically or logically, we know that there is no correlation between consuming a twin banana or a triplet banana for that matter and conceiving. But there are instances where we are slightly reluctant to let go of these food taboos or myths. So that is where I wanted to probe into the reasons behind this. So I'm sure, in the other panels, and also I can also see Debalina ma'am speaking about how religion becomes a very important social marker for propagating food taboos or myths. And we also have medical or scientific reasons, which is actually clouded in terms of what you call as the old man's wisdom. So that is how it gets culturally propagated across generations. So my focus today is to look at the life cycle approach. So how it is primarily linked to propagating food taboos and myths, and what is the larger agenda in building what you call as the life cycle. So for the same, I want to focus on 4 major stages of a woman's life cycle, starting from childhood to adolescence to adult life and then widowhood. So the very first stage, childhood. So I think myths or taboos in childhood actually takes a very different angle. Because as far as you can see, and also our studies do show that access to nutritious and rich food is indeed gendered. So for instance, meat, egg, exotic vegetables and fruits, or even something as your dry fruits. So, there is always, it is primarily provided to boys in the family because the impetus there is on boys growing up in a healthy manner. So the myth around girls needing lesser food is still pervasive. So that is why, we speak about how girls in a family eat least and eat last. Okay, so which in fact contributes to what is called as systemic nutritional violence. So moving from childhood to adolescence, I think that is where the game changes. Because the minute menarche hits a girl, that's the first sign when your body says that it's ready for what is called as reproduction or procreation, right? So from there, we have a list of restrictions or taboos or myths, whatever you call it. So for instance, during the first menstrual cycle, girls are not actually provided spicy foods or hot foods. So you're more often asked to consume cereals or grams or dal, curd, sweets, milk and allied dairy products because they are all considered to be cold food, which would ensure smooth cycles. And generally, we all are aware about the menstrual food myths. So, for example, something as simple as, we would all have heard this. So, touching pickles when you're menstruating would spoil them. Similarly, you're not allowed to enter kitchens and cook and all of those. Okay, so which we have been propagating throughout generations. And as far as adolescence is concerned, I also want to draw your attention to what is called as food fads. So food fads that is characterized by food trends, which is highly restrictive, or it is an unusual preference for a particular food. So for instance, your fat diets like your low carb diet, your grapefruit diet, your cookie diet, all of these operate on building up a larger agenda, which is called as the ideal body image for girls. So what happens here is a social marker of desirability and acceptability of women's body suddenly starts to seep in. So this particular concept was actually dealt in detail by Naomi Wolf in her groundbreaking work, which is called as the beauty myth, where she gives very clear-cut examples of how food fads have a negative impact on young women and girls. So, for example, it contributes to what is called as nutritional deficiencies. It leads to eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia, all of those. And even I think something very recent. So your keto diet. So keto diet actually scientifically it works differently for males and females is what your recent studies say. That's because women are more susceptible to what is called as leptin sensitivity. Leptin, a satiable kind of a hormone. But we are now coming to believe that keto is also turning to be a fad diet. And also something which is related to adolescence, and again, when you move into adulthood, is the diet plans related to PCOS or PCOD patients. So off late, I was closely analyzing the kind of diet plans which is being vouched through social media. So for example, your Instagram reels, your YouTube videos, your Facebook shorts, all of them. If you look into the diet plans for PCOS or PCOD patients, you would realize that most of them advocate for foods which boost fertility. So, for example, your low GI diet, your anti-inflammatory diet, your DASH diet, all of them, the larger picture is to help you conceive. Okay, but PCOS is not just that, because I can also personally say that I've had friends who have told me that as long as you're able to conceive, living with PCOS is fine. But the problem there is no one pauses to ask what kind of food do you consume for allied issues that come along with PCOS. So for example, what is the kind of food that can help you with your acne, your weight gain around hips, your hair loss, mood swings, all of these. So if you look into your diet plans, 90% of them is to aid healthy ovulation, which is also to ensure that there is no complication in this, in your system of reproduction. So from there, when you come to adult life, okay, the minute you start thinking about a baby, elders around you, or even be it your doctors, they would ask you to cut down on what is called as alcohol, or no smoking, no refined sugar. And when you get into the cycle of pregnancy, I think it's an unending list of taboos. More importantly, in India. See, I'm not saying that it is only in India, but we also have it in the Western nations. But somewhere along here, we just roll around with it. So the very common ones, for example, hot foods like fruits like pineapple or papaya, or even your leafy vegetables, which can cause miscarriage or induce preterm labor, is supposed to be avoided. Similarly, consumption of jaggery. I think jaggery and its subcomponent dishes are not permitted until at least your 6th month of pregnancy. And down south, I've also heard about, people generally avoid the consumption of Malabar spinach, snake gourd, bottle gourd, bitter gourd, jackfruit, each of these. And recently, I was also talking to a friend who told me from the 36th week onwards, she was asked to add butter to boiled rice water and consume. So the science behind it was, she says that it is basically to ease out the process of labor. And more or less, you have the other kind of myths. such as consuming saffron. So we know that. So all of us have been asked to consume saffron with milk so as to improve the complexion of the child. But many of us do not realize that scientifically it is basically to reduce cramps, and consuming saffron with milk even during your menstrual cycles can provide you with a lot of relief. Similarly, consuming certain types of meat, for example, mutton, during pregnancy can result in more facial hair for the baby. And I think generally dark colored fruits and vegetables are avoided, as it might cause dark complexion of the baby. All of these, okay, so routine myths or taboos that if you look around, probably women in your households have also followed. So moving from the state of conceiving to your postpartum scenario, you would see that most of these myths are again continued, and probably it works in a reverse manner. So, for example, here you're asked to have hot foods and avoid cold foods so that it aids lactation. So, for example, more onion, more garlic. Similarly, lactating mothers are given nuts in ghee, and you're asked to avoid foods with small seeds, fish with small bones, consume less amount of water, completely avoid oily food items, all of these so that your lactation is also in the right, it happens in the right way. So from there, I would move into what is called as the fag end of the life cycle, where you're probably moving into widowhood. So here, we go back to the age-old dictum, which I still feel is, still in rounds today in some of the very traditional and close-knit communities. Probably it is not explicit, but very implicitly or very subtly, which is still followed, where widows are not, allowed to consume food items like meat, fish, uh, eggs, garlic, onion, or even something as simple as your masoor dal. Because each of these are considered as hot foods, which would ignite their passion. So, what happens is, in this particular framework of your life cycle, when you arrive at widowhood, all requisite norms of your life cycle is actually completed. So, anything which sexually stimulates you is prohibited there. It's a very strict prohibition there. So this is how taboos operate through different life stages. And if you want to ask me about the major takeaways, so if I try and chart the same cycle for men and associated food taboos, I can see that it doesn't work in this manner, because as far as men are concerned, for them food taboos or myths operate only at a later stage in life, probably 45 plus, 50 plus, and there the concerns are extremely different, because see, probably it's to have a healthy lifestyle, for a healthy heart, or to avoid what is called as your prostate cancer and all of those. So the concerns are different there. But even today, as far as women are concerned, procreation tops the list of reason for gendered food taboos. And another associated idea is that taboos affect more on vulnerable groups. So your socio-economic markers and conditions still matter a lot. Probably, in metros, we are finding an evolving situation or a changing condition. But most of your studies still show that in rural India, things are somewhere along, it is still the same. I think the saddest part of this is that no one has bothered to look at the science behind it. So that is where women themselves turn out to be their own enemies, because women propagate these myths or taboos as part of taking forward this life cycle within what I call the genealogical framework. So that's a short intro to gender and food myths. Hope I was clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting and thought-provoking presentation, Swethal. I would now request Rajyashree to share her thoughts on the topic. Over to you.
Thank you, Stella. So first, I would like to begin by saying that why I have chosen the topic of gender and food taboos today to speak about was that since my childhood, I have always heard stories about my maternal great grandmother from my mother. And most of this, like, she was born in 1900 and she was widowed just at the age of 24 in 1924. So much of those stories are about what she ate. And as a child, I could not really understand that why she only ate lentils and rice. Okay, so and it is obviously when I grew up and later I researched, I could understand why. I could understand the patriarchal system, the societal system that worked behind it. That is what I'm going to speak about today, mostly. And it is both in a contemporary scenario, I would say that it is both fascinating and sad that like at the turn of the century now, like I can choose what I wear to work, what I eat, choose to get married or not get married, but that was not the case for her. So moving over to the eating habits of widows. So since we are talking about food habits of the upper caste Hindu widows of the 19th and the 20th centuries, we must consider the fact that they were not outside the purview of Hindu rituals and customs. On the contrary, the baton or burden of upholding the sanctity of a household were often passed on to them. So, as Debalina ma'am pointed out, according to the Hindu philosophy, there are three gunas or qualities found in a human: sattva, tamas, and rajas. A sattvic person is one whose mind and body are in equilibrium. A rajasic person is excited, angry, nervous, and stressed and does not have his or her emotions in control. A tamasic person is lazy, dull, and has no inertia. Similarly, Ayurveda says that there are three kinds of food corresponding to these three qualities. Sattvic food consists of pure vegetarian fare, whereas tamasic and rajasic food contains fried fare, meat, eggs, red lentils or masoor dal, onion, garlic, and other items that make one passionate, angry, aggressive, or lazy. It is often believed that our personalities are defined by what we eat. Food is not only nourishment for us, but it also gives us a certain amount of sensory pleasure. In the yesteryears, a woman, more so a widow, had to suppress her feelings and desires after her husband died. Her social value diminished to that of one who had no purpose of being alive without her male counterpart. She had no right to any overtures of emotion and passion, and therefore was unjustly barred from having any animal protein. Even today, widows sometimes eat one meal per day containing raw rice, since parboiled rice is a taboo for widows, and bland boiled vegetables, nothing that would excite her palate. Abstinence from eating is treated as a symbol of her mourning. Many widows in India suffer from malnutrition even today. Often, eating less food or eating only once a day means that her lifespan is shortened. Obviously, because without her husband, a woman has no business being alive. Radhika Sachdev, in her essay Women in White: The Ill Treatment of Widows, writes: the problem of India's widows is not confined to Vrindavan, Mathura, Tirupati, and the other holy towns, ironically, which are places of pilgrimage dedicated to God Krishna, Lord of carnal love. Here, widows have traditionally congregated for centuries. In every fourth household in India, there is a widow. 50% of these widows are over the age of 50. So many other deprivations that a widow faces that the mortality rate for widows is a shocking 85% higher than it is for married women. So, interestingly enough, when I was researching on the food habits of the widows, I also discovered that these widows are responsible for much of the development of the Bengali vegetarian cuisine that we are acquainted with now. So, there was a 19th century adage which I consider to be quite cruel on the contribution of widows to the Bengali vegetarian cuisine. It says it is impossible to taste the full glory of vegetarian cooking unless a wife became a widow. These widows were often given the responsibility of managing the Ninamish or the vegetarian kitchen, while married women cooked in the Amish or the non vegetarian kitchen. Much of the traditional Bengali vegetarian dishes, as we know them today, were invented in these vegetarian kitchens. While the best portions of the vegetables were reserved for the men of the family, widows had to get ingenious with whatever scraps they were left with. The peels of various vegetables like parval or pointed gourd, bottle gourd, and potatoes were mashed and cooked in mustard oil with poppy seeds and mustard seed paste. They also made lentils with vegetables and other savories from stems and roots and tubers of leafy vegetables. So now coming to the pregnancy and menstruation food taboos, I would particularly like to speak about the Konth community in Orissa. So it does not mean that there aren't other communities in India where these taboos, certain taboos related to pregnancy and menstruation are not followed. But I found this community to be particularly interesting. The example of this community to be particularly interesting. The Konth community of Orissa is concentrated mostly in the district of Kandamal, Kalahandi, and Rayagad. Backyard chicken rearing is a common practice among the women of this community. But strangely enough, they do not get any benefit from what they nourish. Women are barred from eating chicken meat and eggs as soon as they hit puberty. So, women of the reproductive age, that is, women from 15 to 49 years, cannot tap into one of the cheapest sources of animal protein, chicken meat and eggs. Nobody knows how this stigma came into being, but this has been followed until now. The diet for the women of this community mainly consists of rice, mashed potatoes, and a side of onions. It goes without saying that their food lacks in micronutrients, and most of the women are anemic. They also do not have much knowledge about food preparation techniques, which include leafy greens and iron rich food like plantain. Cattle are also a part of the Kond agricultural community, but it is peculiar that Kond women have no knowledge of drawing milk from the cows or preparing milk based products like cheese, curd, and butter. Very recently, Care India's technical assistance and research for Indian nutrition and agriculture has come to the rescue of these women. These women are being taught various food preparation methods that include a variety of fruits, vegetables, and leafy greens. Many women who are working for self help groups are also helping the community to break the taboo around consuming chicken meat. Women are now adding eggs to their daily diet. Now moving over to the practice of food taboo during pregnancy. The practice of food taboo is widespread in developing countries. For instance, in a study in South Africa, the most common foods that were avoided were meat and fish, potatoes, fruits, beans, eggs, butternut, and pumpkin, which are good sources of essential nutrients. The reasons for avoidance of the food items associated with pregnancy outcome, labor, and to avoid an undesirable body appearance for the baby. Studies in Ethiopia also revealed that food items avoided were honey, sugarcane, milk, yogurt, cheese, fatty meat, eggs, fruits, and vegetables. And the reasons mentioned for the avoidance of these food items were that certain foods get plastered on the fetal head, makes the baby fat, and makes it difficult for the mother to deliver the baby. Even though dietary intake during pregnancy could be affected by many factors, including affordability and accessibility, food taboo has been recognized as one of the contributing factors to maternal undernutrition in pregnancy, especially in rural settings. Coming to menstruation, so menstruation in India, I find, is a paradoxical condition for women. It is a cause for celebration and also a thing of shame. In Nepal, menstruating women are barred from consuming milk, yogurt, butter, meat, and other nutritious foods for fear that their impurity will cause cows to become ill. The typical diet during menstruation is dry foods, salt, and rice. Women serving food is often seen as a symbol of love and affection in Asia and Africa. So is the abstinence of women from food while serving it to men, who are treated as demigods, obviously. Not only is there a huge gap in eating patterns of men and women, where men have unlimited access to any kind of food they want to eat, but also women often give the best part of their food to the men and children in the family. They often sustain themselves on leftovers. In some cultures, women are also not allowed to eat in front of anyone. Therefore, food is a negotiation tool that women are taught to use for keeping the happiness and well being of their family unit intact. The relationship of women and food can also be studied from the angle of fasting for the health of others. Women are ironically taught to starve themselves on occasions so that others in her family are bestowed with good health. Now, the second topic that I would like to speak about is superfoods and how superfoods have become symbolic. So, how are superfoods symbolic in the current scenario? So, some of the superfoods that we regularly hear about are kale, spinach, blueberries, salmon, avocado, seaweed, green tea, oatmeal, quinoa. So, before talking about superfoods, let us first understand what superfoods are. The term superfood is a 20th century invention. Superfoods are defined as food items that are rich in antioxidants, omega 3 fatty acids, and other micronutrients. The first superfood to be marketed by the United Fruit Company was banana. During the First World War, it was termed to be cheap and nutritious, something that could be had with every meal. The efficacy of superfoods is a matter of continuous research, but at the same time, we must understand the cultural and economical forces at play behind the promotion of superfoods by marketing agencies. Superfoods form a billion-dollar industry in areas like Mexico through imports and exports. Therefore, it goes without saying that the more customers lean towards the fad of healthy eating, the more these industries benefit. Consumption of items like avocado and blueberries have also become a status symbol for the rich and the upper middle class. The promotion of such food items through the words super and ultra aim at the fact that these foods are the cure to all the physical elements one is facing, and that other conventional food items do not have as much nutritive value. But that is obviously not the case. It is advisable to have a balanced diet that includes all kinds of fruit, vegetables, and dairy products. Also, the so-called superfoods like avocado, dark chocolate, quinoa, and chia seeds are not a novelty to humankind. They have been consumed for thousands of years by Central American nations. By claiming them as new or novel, the Western world is participating in a kind of cultural usurpation. So that is all I had to say about superfoods and gender taboos.
Thank you very much for your interesting and very engaging discussion, Rajyashree.
Thank
We
you,
will now
Stella.
move on to the question and answer session. My first question is for Debolina Di. Do you think a shift from traditional to modern food eating behaviors has affected positive health outcomes and sustainability? It appears Debolina Di has suddenly left the panel, probably owing to some technical issues. So I'll move on to the second. Okay, she's joining.
Yeah.
Am I
Am
audible,
I
Debolina Di?
audible now?
Yes, you are. Am I audible to you?
I'm facing a lot of technical issues. Yes, Stella, but I'm facing a lot of technical issues.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Uh,
the first
both the
question,
sessions
should
were
I
very
repeat?
nice.
Should I repeat the
Yes,
question once
please.
more? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Do you
please, Stella,
think?
once again.
Yes. Do you think a shift from traditional to modern food eating behaviors has affected positive health outcomes and sustainability?
Uh, to some extent, I would say yes, because eating today, whatever we have discussed, the other two uh, panelists also, the speakers who already have told about the uh, things regarding the effect on the not only the culture, also the health. But yes, the eating behaviors that has been changed nowadays, we are actually taking things in a very relaxed way. I would say we are not trying to find out the serious point which lies deep into the crisis that lays as a crisis in the middle. Like, see, nowadays, what we do, we are always in a hurry. Okay, we just take some, maybe in the morning, we are taking a bread, we are taking it in the hand, and we are walking through the street just to catch a bus, maybe, and we are having our food. So there is no connection between the food and the consumer. It is always important to understand that yes, food is also an important part of our life, because we are sustaining, we are living, we can stay healthy only for food. That's a very big issue. But we are not trying to see through the things in a very serious manner. So, modern food eating behaviors have definitely changed a lot, and that has affected the health outcomes and the sustainability to an extent. That's for true. But definitely, I would say everything that is devoid of taboos. Taboos are different. I mean, this is not, we should not have this, we should not eat this during the menstruating time, or maybe during the pregnancy period. There may be some taboos are there. Those taboos, I'm not going into it, but definitely the food shifts have affected a lot.
Thank you for answering that, Debolina Di. My next question is for Swethal. Carol Adams, in her work, The Sexual Politics of Meat, associates masculinity with hearty meat eating and femininity with the consumption of apparently lighter or more refreshing items such as vegetables. What would be your observations on this within the contemporary scenario?
Thanks, Stella. Uh, I think within the contemporary scenario, this particular, I mean, as far as I can see, the minute I hear the question, it looks like, again, another gendered stereotype which is being propagated. So, as far as I can see, in the contemporary scenario, probably this doesn't work. But at the same time, we also need to look at how this particular connection or correlation came in. So, as I was mentioning in my talk, uh, see, consuming meat for a male is generally associated with building what is called as a virile body. It aids to build what is called as a virile body. And probably for females, consumption of healthy food or healthy vegetables is again the larger agenda is basically to help your or aid your body function in a particular way. So probably it's out of that kind of a ideology that probably this correlation has come. But in the current times, I think it's probably we are even moving for a swap. Right, so building up a virile body, I've seen men around me who have built up a virile body with being pure vegetarians or probably even moving on to veganism and all of those. So these associations are also, I think, part of what is called as your propagating what is called as these larger myths or taboos.
Thank you for answering that, Shwetal. My next question is for Rajyashree. Do you think that in an era of dining out and following online food trends, millennials are actually more inclined to assert their individuality over cooking or food choices rather than merely adhering to convention? Rajyashree, I request you to unmute your mic before speaking.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah.
You're audible now.
So there can be quite a few answers to this. The first thing that I want to say is that yes, millennials are trying out new food items on weekends, on Fridays. Dining out on Friday has become like the thing, and they are also buying into the idea of experience. Like they're going for food items that are Instagrammable or going to places that will look good on their accounts, Instagram accounts. But certainly when we are in a rush, like I have also experienced this, when we are in a rush, we always fall back on convention. Like when on a Monday morning, when I want to go to office at 8 a.m., obviously I will not think how to make rasgulla or how to make pizza. So that is one thing. Secondly, when it comes to food blogging, so there are two kinds of food blogging, I would say. So with the advent of fusion food in the last 2 decades, some bloggers are obviously jumping onto the bandwagon of showcasing fusion food, and sometimes it goes. Personally, I feel it goes to the point of ridiculing simple food items like momos or dosa. So like things like we often see things like and laugh about these things also, things like Szechuan dosa, mayonnaise on dosa, or chocolate golgappa. So rather than asserting their individuality, they are buying into convention. And the second type of food blogging is obviously is a form of art. It's a form of expressing oneself, where food bloggers are going to cultural walks and food tours to showcase unique food items and history from different parts of the world. Then I would say that COVID also has changed our relationship with food and how we look at it as part of our daily lives. Uh, Before COVID, many people who looked at food only as a source of nourishment had started cooking during lockdown. Thus, cooking has become a medium of expression for them and hence an art form.
Thank you for answering that, Rajyashree. My next question is again for Debolina Di. Do you think that the spiritual dimension of food is at all relatable or even relevant to the modern generation?
Now, this one would be a very, I think it depends on the individual itself. Because the way we connect to the food or way we connect to our ethics, food also has something to deal with ethics, something to deal with our cultural understanding of the course of food, right? There is a deep relationship between the culture that we actually imbibe and the way we are having the attitude towards food. Obviously, that won't be a big difference, maybe, but it is very difficult for nowadays people who are, especially who are very light-hearted, who do not take things in a very serious manner, or what would I say? It's not serious, not about seriousness, it's about sincerity towards the food. Now, food is also an important part of our life. This also has to be understood by the individual. Only then it can be the spiritual dimension can open. First of all, we have to understand the reality. Then we can come to the spiritual dimension.
It appears Debalina is facing technical issues again. So I'll move on to the next question, which is for Swethal. How do you see gendered notions of eating alone in public spaces impacting women through assumptions made on their respectability or desirability?
Thanks, Stella, for that very interesting question. I think there was a time when we believed that kitchen spaces were, uh, very liberating or creative spaces. But I think of late, solo dining is, in fact, I mean, I would like to call this concept as term it as solo dining. So solo dining has emerged to be a very liberating process, but at the same time, extremely problematic, if I say, at least with regard to our local realities. Because for a woman to walk into a restaurant by yourself, order food, and consume, I say it becomes problematic because we have one or two reasons. I think the first one would be there's a whole lot of surveillance there, right? So the primary question there is why is she alone, or what is she doing alone in a restaurant? Uh, and the second one, I think, is along with it comes a lot of unwarranted judgments about the quantity of food that she consumes and probably the way she looks. So, probably if you're relishing your food and you're slightly on the plumpier side, the immediate response is no wonder. But I think if you're relishing your food and if it does not manifest on your body, probably people would, you would have a judgment, a phallic kind of a judgment where, oh my God, look at the amount of food that she's consuming, right? And very recently, I think we have also had studies in metros where women have shared their experiences of solo dining and what they have said with regard to their body language. Okay, so when you're under a lot of surveillance, people also notice your body language while eating. So what happens there is, if I remember in a survey, there was a woman who said, even something simple as consuming what's called as your Maharaja burger or your triple layer burger, right? It gets a bit messy. See, what happens is obviously, it's slightly clumsy, or probably you spill over a bit, all of those. But when you're in a group and you eat, it doesn't matter at all. But when you're dining by yourself, you suddenly become very conscious about people noticing you for spilling over a bit of food or all of those. Uh, so, and yeah, so I think that's how solo dining is actually a very liberating process if you try out. But it is still problematic in and around us. So I think more often we should all vouch for it is what I would like to say.
Thank you for answering that, Shwetal. My last question is for Rajyashree. Would you say that modern food habits constitute a fragmented culture, particularly because the demographic is forced to eat what is available rather than consider other kinds of ethics or cultural notions.
So what I feel is that there is a shift in how we eat and not what we eat. Because when someone is shifting to another region of the country for work or study, so what I have found, like while staying in Delhi, is not like in the era of Blinkit and Big Basket. It's not very difficult to procure native food items, like food items that I would get here in Kolkata. The quality may vary, but more or less it is available. So but how we are eating is is the matter, because now when we are eating between meetings, we are eating in a hurried manner, and the practice of community eating has diminished. So like maybe when we are only following our culture, or when we are only giving into our culture when on occasions, like somebody in our office does a Poila Boishak party or an Onam party. So that it's about not what we eat, but how we are eating. So that is where I would say it is a fragmented culture now.
Thank you for answering that, Rajyashree. With that, we come to an end to tonight's discussion. I thank each one of you for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with us. I'm sure our audience had a wonderful time and have learned a lot as well. We are grateful to you all for taking out time from your busy schedules and for being a part of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have been in your company this evening. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions on food and drinks, the details of which can be viewed on www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Good night and take care, everyone.
Thank you, Stella.
Thank you.
Thank you.